Hello there, welcome to lesson number 7 in our series on using FluidDesigner for 3D printing to create ceramic and porcelain objects. In today's lesson we're going to show you how you can use a gear mesh, modify a gear mesh to make a vase or rather a support for a glass vase. So if we start up FluidDesigner, first thing we need to do is to go to Learning Projects, Ceramic and Porcelain Projects. We're doing lesson number 7, so we want 07, a gear vase. So this is the object that we're going to create today, and its intention is as a kind of support for a glass vase. So if you have a glass vase that will fit in the shape in the centre here, this could go on the outside of it just to change the appearance of it. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on the screencast keys, so any key presses I make will be displayed here. As is usual, the instructions are in the help panel here, although not quite all the instructions are in the help panel to do this completely. We're going to do one or two things slightly differently, but anyway, we'll start it off. So we want to add a mesh, gears, and then gear. So add a mesh, gears, and then gear. So add a gear mesh, and when we do that, with the toolbox open, as long as this panel here is open, you'll see that there are quite a large number of variables in this panel, all of which can change the appearance of this object. If we go to view and zoom to selected first of all, and I'll just close the properties window down a little bit. So this is the basic gear, the default gear that comes in FluidDesigner, and we're going to modify this gear and turn it into the object at the bottom. Now, one thing to note at the moment is there is no thickness to any of these walls, and there's also no wall on the inside of this gear. And that's going to be quite important. We are going to probably have to fill that in at some point. So let's have a look. What do we need to set? Well, the number of teeth. Well, that's pretty obvious. If we change the number of teeth option here in the toolbox, as we move it down to 6, which is the value that you're asked to set it at, that clearly reduces the number of teeth around this basic object. The next thing is the radius. Well, it's currently at 1. Again, if we go to the information panel, you'll see that the size of this object is very small at the moment. It's only 2 millimeters, just over 2 millimeters, the X and the Y. That's clearly very tiny. So we want to increase the radius, and it's quite obvious what's happening here. The radius of this object is increasing. So we've got a radius of 6 millimeters at the moment, and X and Y are approximately 12. So the radius is the distance from the center to the gear itself. So that's 6. Another 6 on the other side. That gives you your 12 millimeters. We want to go quite a lot bigger than that. We want to go up to a radius of 60. So we just need to keep going, or we can just type it in, whichever. We'll just do it slowly here so you can see that it's expanding out. I've gone a bit too far. Bring it back, and I'm just scrolling the center mouse button now so that you can see what the finished size is. Okay, so we've changed the number of teeth and we've changed the radius. The next thing we want to do is to change the width. At the moment it's 0.2. Well, if we zoom in, the width is actually the height of this object. You'll see that when I change this to 1.2, the height of the object, or the width of the gear, changes. So we want a value of 6 millimeters. Okay, so I've gone up to 6.2 there. So I'm actually going to type in 6 mm, 6 millimeters. You do need the mm. And the thing to note here is that the Z value, blue is the Z dimension, the Z value here in the window, in the properties panel, is 12 millimeters. Our width is set at 6. Well, the 6 is actually 6 millimeters from the grid to the top, and 6 millimeters from the grid to the bottom, giving us a total height or a total width of the gear as 6 millimeters. So you do need to be aware of what these values are if you want specific sizes. If you don't want specific sizes, not so important. Next thing is the base. So let's try increasing the base value. Well, you can see what's happening there. It's filling it in on the inside. We want to go up to a base of 40, so I'm actually going to type in 40 millimeters now. So that fills us into the inside, but remember that there isn't actually any walls, there are no meshes on the inside of here. So we are going to need to fill those in a minute. Yeah, there's no mesh on the inside there. This, what you can see here is just the grid. Now the next setting is the Addendum. So what's the Addendum? Well, at the moment it's 1 millimeter. Well, if let's just change it slowly. There's 2, 3. Well, we have 6 gears. The Addendum is this length here between the gear teeth. It's moving it inwards. So 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters, 5, 6. For each location between successive gears teeth, we're moving inwards over this length by 6 millimeters. So I'm going to type that in as 6 millimeters. So that's the Addendum. It's how much we move it in here. The next value is the Addendum. So let's just change that slowly. Well, that's pretty obvious what that's doing. It's lengthening out the teeth themselves. And we want to go all the way out to 80. Okay, so again I'm going to type it in and get the exact value. So there's our Addendum. So we can see, we're seeing slowly what each of these parameters do. The next thing is the pressure angle. Well, if I just reduce the pressure angle, you see as we reduce it, the width of each of these arms, each of these gear teeth is increasing. As we increase it, the opposite effect. So we want a pressure angle of 0. So each of these arms here is quite wide. We don't want to change the skewness. We want to change the conical angle to 25. Now if I just move it around here, you'll be able to see what the conical angle is. What you need to do is to look at this line here and see what happens to it as we change the conical angle. So as we increase it, you can see that the straight line has moved across, so we've got an angle now at the end of each of those arms. So we're increasing that up to 25 degrees. So it's given us a sloping edge instead of a vertical edge at the end of each of the arms. So that's the conical angle. And then finally we want to change the crown. Well, the crown, what that does is it actually lifts up each of the arms or each of the teeth of what used to be a gear. Yeah, and we can raise it up, and we can actually only go up to 100 millimeters in this instance. But as you can see, it's lifted it up. So we've changed what was a gear into this new shape now. So those are all the values that we want there, so we can move that out of the way now. We can delete the one at the bottom, the original one, by pressing the X key on the keyboard. Now, before I save this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export it as a object file, a printable file. So if I go to File, Export, and export it as a wavefront object, and I'm going to export it to the desktop as 07 Gear Vase. And if we then go to Netfab and import it into Netfab, go to Project and Open, go to the desktop, open the Gear Vase, you'll see we get a warning red triangle. So something needs repairing. But notice that we've got a hole in the center of this. So let's see what happens when we use Netfab. So we go to Extras and repair the part. And I just need to move Netfab across because it doesn't fit very nicely in my video capture screen. So if I click Update, you'll see there are a couple of hole problems and there's some border edge problems. So the yellow line, the yellow circle around there is where the problems are. So if we go to automatic repair and execute it and then apply the repair, NetFab's actually fixed everything for us, but it's actually done something that we didn't really want, which is actually to fill in the circle in the middle here. And the reason for that was because there was no walls on the inside of the original gear. So let's not save that now. We'll just go to Project and New and discard that. And if we go back to our original file, what I'm talking about is there are no faces on the inside here. So what I need to do is I need to go into edit mode. I need to press the tab key with the object highlighted. Now everything's selected at the moment, so to deselect everything I press the A key on the keyboard. Now the way to fill this in is to highlight the rim at the bottom of this object and highlight the rim at the top, okay, the edge, and then there's a quick procedure for filling it all in. So first of all I'm going to switch to edge select mode. I'm just going to zoom in a bit further. Now I need to hold down two keys on my keyboard. The Alt key to allow me to select the edge around the bottom, but at the same time I want to select the edge around the top. And you'll notice that the bottom one switches off when I select the other. So the way to do it is to hold down the Alt key and the Shift key at the same time. And we've now got both edges highlighted. We now need to actually switch from FluidDesigner into a Blender menu system. So if I click on Blender up here, and if I go to Mesh and go to Edges, the option I want is to bridge the edge loops. I've selected these two edge loops. What I'm going to do now is allow FluidDesigner or Blender to bridge them, to fill them in for me by making faces between two or more edge loops. So when we select bridge edge loops, you'll see it's filled in all those faces on the inside for us automatically or quickly in one go. So we can now come out of edit mode, and that will now keep the hole there. So we can save this now. So if we go to File, and remember to do Save As, don't do Save because you'll delete the original file. Go up through the menu system and go to My Projects, Ceramic Projects, and we're saving 07 gear as a Blender file. If we now go to File and export this as a wavefront object to the desktop, and I'm going to export it as 07 gear vase again, so I'm going to overwrite the one that we were looking at before, the one where the hole was filled in. So if we export that now, if we now go back to NetFab Basic and open this modified 07 gear vase, notice we haven't got the warning red triangles this time. We've got a hole in the center there, and notice it is in fact green on the inside now because we filled it in with faces. So if we go to extras and repair the part this time, you'll see when I zoom in it's triangulated the inside of that hole now, so it shouldn't fill the hole in this time. And if I just move it across, we've actually got less problems. We've only got two holes, no border edge problems. So if I click update, in fact it's taken the holes away, but even so I would always recommend you run automatic repair anyway and execute it. That will apply the triangulation of the faces, and always apply the repair as well and remove any old parts. So the other object that we created where it did fill in the hole was still printable, but if you want to keep the hole you need to do this additional bit of work. You do need to watch out when using NetFab that it doesn't do things that you don't want it to do. Generally it's a superb tool which will always fix your meshes, or almost always fix your meshes, so that they can be printable. So we now need to save this, so we go to Part, Export Part as a wavefront object, export it to the desktop as 07 gear vase. I changed that when I shouldn't have done. We should have had repaired. Clicked on the wrong thing. So save it with the name repaired. And that's the end of today's lesson. Thank you.